And now, an exclusive sneak preview of a recent XTalks webinar, Overcoming Challenges in Implementing eConsent in Clinical Trials.
We wanted to look at this rise of digital and decentralized trials, which requires the intelligent use of technology. And I was somewhat pleased to see that technology was one of those concerns raised by those of you who have thought about eConsent but haven't really pushed it out yet. Because, technology is what we do at VDoc. That's what I always focus on. It's my most, the part that excites me the most. And I really do think that intelligent use of technology can make life easier and make all of these processes just much more obtainable for everyone. And it doesn't have to be a scary situation. So this technology, like we said here, it enables greater access. Maybe that's remote. Maybe it's using more electronic patient-reported outcomes, telehealth, that sort of thing. We're easing burden on the sites and the participants. Should ease burden. We don't want it to increase burden and make it difficult. We can come back to that in a couple minutes, some best practices and things to consider. And it reduces, if not eliminates, data entry and completion errors. And that's a huge claim, I know. And some people are probably saying, no, that's impossible. You're never going to be able to eliminate it. However, I'd say with the right technology partner in your pocket and designing the right study, you can get close to a 0% error rate in some of your studies. Takes a lot of work, but it's totally worth that effort. And then finally, technology can increase patient engagement and then retention. So how do we do this? We started with the rise of electronic data capture. And for those of us who've been in the business long enough, you might remember when those big boxy laptops and custom PCs that had to be sent out to the sites that had the software preloaded. Nowadays, we're looking at most software is web-based applications, so it runs on just about any system as long as there's an internet connection. We've seen the wide adoption, at least in my experience, over the last 7 to 10 years of eCOA and patient-reported outcomes. Most people are getting really comfortable with this modality for data collection, and we're seeing that this has really improved the quality of that data being collected and the consistency of that data. We're starting to see more adoption of e-source or direct data capture, so skipping a paper intermediary where it isn't necessary, or skipping entering the data in some other system and putting it directly into the trial's eClinical system. Telehealth was a big one that sprung up out of necessity during the pandemic. So we've seen a lot of sites that have adopted their own telehealth procedures, and then those are naturally being pushed into some of these clinical studies where it's appropriate. We're seeing more remote monitoring and risk-based monitoring, both of those going hand in hand. With the right technology, you can help facilitate that process. And all of this leads to this idea of decentralized clinical trials, or a hybrid approach that's somewhat decentralized, somewhat still in the clinic. And really, even though this has been a buzzword over the last few years, it's not necessarily anything new. We haven't required a tremendous amount of new technology, again, if you're working with the right vendor. A lot of the technology to support the DCT has been in existence for quite a while. So let's move on. What is this eConsent thing we're talking about? So one thing I didn't list on that last page, because it is one of these aspects that, yes, even though regulatory agencies are pushing for it, we're still a little bit nervous about stepping into this arena of eConsent. So I pulled a simple definition, well, simple, it's a pretty long definition, from the FDA, one of the FDA guidance documents. And really, to paraphrase this and shut it down or make it a little shorter, it's really an electronic system or process which uses additional parameters of multimedia, text, graphics, audio, video, and of course a compliant electronic signature if your data is going to be submitted to a regulatory agency to help obtain and record consent from these study participants. So leave that there for just a second so you can read through it. Okay, so benefits. What are some of the benefits? Let's start there before we get to the potential problems or the things we might be a little resistant to. So we'll start with these benefits. So first off, we have this idea that eConsent can improve patient understanding, and it's going back to this multimedia idea. You can have video, you can have images, you can have dictionaries, glossaries, you can have active submission of questions which go right back to the trial site if someone is doing the electronic consent fully remotely. And that's worth mentioning here. eConsent can be done in the clinic, but it can also be done remotely if you also have some telehealth and other ways to connect with patients. So there's really, just always remember that eConsent can be both done in a remote setting and in a clinic setting, or if the study allows it, in both settings. So we have multimedia. This 2015 survey showing that 35% of patients who didn't enroll in a study listed a lack of understanding of the traditional consent form as a major factor. And even though we are supposed to be writing consent forms in lay terms, they can be really complicated. Even using, ensuring that the information is accessible, it's still a lot of information. And it can be confusing for anyone who's not in this industry and looking at these forms day in, day out. And that's where things like a video can really come into play. It ensures consistency, clarity, and also engages different people's learning modalities. Some people are visual, some people are audio, and here we can attack all of those different learning styles.
To view the entirety of this webinar, visit the link in the description and register on xtalks.com completely free of charge.